started with a sound, a sharp, shrill tone that ripped through the silence, jolting me awake in an instant. My body reacted before my brain did. Heart pounding, breath coming in short, ragged gasps. My phone vibrated so violently that it tumbled off the nightstand, landing with a dull thud against the wooden floor. The noise was deafening in the stillness of my room. For a brief, disoriented moment, I thought I was dreaming. But no, the glow of the screen cut through the darkness, the only light in the suffocating void of my bedroom. This was real, and I knew that sound. The emergency alert system, the same blaring tone reserved for natural disasters, Amber Alerts, or, God forbid, national emergencies. My pulse spiked as my mind scrambled through the possibilities. A tornado? An earthquake? Some kind of attack? I reached for my phone with shaking hands, my fingers numb from the abrupt shock of waking. But as my eyes adjusted, as my brain sluggishly processed the words blinking on the screen, everything stopped. For a second, I couldn't breathe, because the message wasn't what I expected, and it wasn't meant for me. Emergency alert. Do not sleep. This is not a test. Do not fall asleep under any circumstances. Stay awake until further notice. The bold red letters burned into my retinas, the words pulsing on the screen like a heartbeat. For a long moment, I just stared, my mind struggling to bridge the gap between reality and whatever this was. Do not sleep? What kind of alert was this? My thoughts felt sluggish, still weighed down by the remnants of sleep, but panic was quickly washing that away. My fingers tightened around the phone, nails pressing into the case as my mind raced for an explanation. A prank? A system glitch? Some government drill that somehow made it through by mistake? I blinked hard, forcing my vision to clear. The time at the top of my screen flickered into focus. 2:43 a.m. A bad hour. The kind of hour when everything is still, when the world outside is just dark and empty enough to feel wrong. Before I could even begin to process what was happening, my phone buzzed again. The same piercing alert tone ripping through the silence like a serrated blade. I nearly dropped it. Another message flashed across the screen. But this one was different. Repeat, do not sleep. They are present. A slow, suffocating chill crawled down my spine. They are present. The words sat heavy in my stomach, twisting like something rotten. Who were they? I sat up, my breath coming too fast, too uneven. My apartment was silent, too silent, wrapped in that unnatural stillness that only exists in the dead of night. The kind of silence that felt wrong, like the air itself was holding its breath. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I fumbled with my phone, my fingers clammy against the glass. News updates, emergency broadcasts, anything to explain what was happening. But there was nothing. No reports, no trending hashtags, no frantic posts from terrified people wondering what the hell was going on. Just that message, that warning. I wanted to believe it was a hoax. I wanted to laugh it off, tell myself some intern at the emergency broadcast center had just made the worst mistake of their career. But I didn't, because deep down my body already knew the truth. This was real. And then I heard it, a sound, faint at first, almost too quiet to notice. Then again, a wet, dragging noise. My breath caught in my throat. It was coming from outside my bedroom door. I froze mid-breath, my entire body locking up, every nerve on fire with alarm. It was slow, deliberate, unnatural, like something heavy was being pulled across the floor. Something sticky, something wrong. I swallowed hard, pulse hammering against my ribs. My apartment wasn't big, just a one-bedroom on the 3rd floor. There shouldn't be anyone inside. For a stupid, fleeting second, I considered calling out, asking if someone was there, but something inside me, some primal instinct buried deep in my bones, screamed at me not to. I reached for the bedside lamp out of habit, but my fingers hovered over the switch. If they didn't know I was awake, I wasn't about to tell them. Slowly, carefully, I pulled my hand back and gripped my phone like a lifeline instead. My bare feet barely made a sound against the floor as I crept toward the door. The dragging noise had stopped. I strained my ears, waiting. Nothing. For a moment, I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Maybe it was the pipes, the neighbors moving furniture upstairs, my own groggy mind playing tricks on me. I let out a slow breath. Then, bzzzt. My phone vibrated. Another alert. If you hear them, do not open your door. Do not let them know you are awake. My entire body went cold. Then, the word pulsed on my screen, sinking into my brain like a splinter, twisting, burrowing, growing into something much worse than just a warning. I took a step back from the door, my breath coming in short, uneven bursts. My mind screamed for logic, for reason, but there was none. Who were they? What were they? I didn't want to know. Moving as silently as I could, I reached for the lock and twisted it, the quiet click deafening in the stillness. Then, heart hammering, I grabbed a chair from the corner and shoved it under the handle, jamming it into place. My hands were slick with sweat, my pulse erratic as I backed away, my legs trembling beneath me. Sleep was out of the question, even if I wanted to, even if my body begged for it. I wasn't going to close my eyes. I wasn't going to risk it. Then, knock, a soft, deliberate tap against the wall. Not loud, not frantic, gentle. My breath caught in my throat. My entire body went rigid, my fingers tightening around the phone. I stared at the front door. It was closed. It was untouched. That wasn't where the knock had come from. No, it had come from inside the apartment. It had come from the wall, the thin barrier that separated my apartment from my neighbors. Just a few inches of drywall, insulation, and the sudden realization that I wasn't alone in this. The knock wasn't random. It wasn't the building settling. It was intentional. Someone was trying to get my attention. I didn't answer. For a long, breathless moment, silence stretched between us. My mind was a war zone, torn between fear and the primal instinct to know, to understand. Then, finally, a voice, muffled through the wall, hushed but urgent. Human. Hey! I flinched at the sound. Are you awake? I could feel the weight of the phone in my hand, the message still burning on the screen. Do not let them know you are awake. My fingers hovered over the screen as if the words themselves could protect me. Don't answer. Don't answer. But my mouth moved before I could stop it. Yeah. Silence. Then, did you get the alert? I swallowed, my throat tight and dry. Yeah. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then his voice came again, lower this time. Did you hear them? A pause. Then, quieter now, as if he was afraid someone, or something, might overhear. You know what's going on? No clue, I admitted. My voice was barely more than a breath. Another pause. Then, with an edge of fear creeping into his tone, he said, But I think there's something in my apartment. A chill swept over me, deep and immediate, like ice water had been poured straight into my veins. My grip on my phone tightened until my knuckles ached. What do you mean? I whispered. I heard something, he said. His breathing was uneven, shallow. In my living room, a pause. Then, like footsteps, but not normal. My stomach twisted. Not normal how? I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. Not normal how? Silence. Then barely audible. Dragging. Slow. My fingers clenched around my phone so tightly I thought the screen might crack. The exact same sound. The same wet, deliberate dragging noise I had heard outside my own bedroom door. The air in my lungs felt thick, suffocating. I locked myself in my room, he continued. His voice sounded small now, fragile. I don't know what to do. I flicked my gaze back to my phone screen, rereading the warnings. Do not sleep. Do not wake them. The words felt heavier now, more sinister. I swallowed past the lump in my throat. Did you see anything? Silence. A long, unnatural silence. Too long. My pulse pounded in my ears, my mind clawing at the endless possibilities. What was he seeing? Why wasn't he answering? Then, finally, I think my roommate fell asleep. A sinking, suffocating feeling settled in my stomach. He's in the other room, he continued, his voice barely more than a breath. I heard him snoring, and then it changed. A cold, unseen hand seemed to wrap around my throat. Changed, I forced out. Changed how? Silence. Then, shaky breathing from the other side of the wall. Like breathing, he finally whispered, but wrong. Too deep, too wet. A violent shudder rippled through my body. My fingers dug into my palm, hard enough to leave crescent-shaped indentations. I wanted to tell him it was nothing. I wanted to say it was his imagination, but I knew that wasn't true, because I felt it too. That creeping, choking, unbearable dread. Then, BZZZT. My phone vibrated violently. Another alert. The screen lit up, and I knew before I even read it that things were about to get worse. If someone has fallen asleep, they are no longer them. Do not let them out. I sucked in a sharp breath, my entire body locking up. My hands trembled so violently I almost dropped my phone. A fresh wave of panic surged through me, clawing its way up my throat, threatening to choke me. Then, through the wall, a new sound, a deep, guttural wheezing. It was slow, rattling, thick with something wet and clogged, like lungs struggling to hold air through fluid-filled chambers. This wasn't breathing. This wasn't human breathing. Through the wall, my neighbor whimpered, a raw, choked sound of pure, animalistic fear. "Oh God," he whispered, "it's at my door." Then came the scratching. Long, slow drags of fingernails or something worse against wood. The sound made my stomach seize, made my skin crawl like 1,000 insects were writhing beneath it. I pressed my ear to the wall. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I could understand it better. Maybe I thought, stupidly, that hearing it up close would make it less terrifying. The moment my skin touched the cold plaster, I regretted it. The wheezing grew louder, closer, like it knew, like it could feel me too. The breaths came in uneven bursts, dragging in too deep, exhaling with a sick, shuddering rattle. But there was something else. A new sound, clicking, soft at first like fingernails tapping against wood, then sharper, deliberate, like bones flexing into place, like joints that had never moved before suddenly remembering how. Then I felt it. Something pressed against the other side of the wall. A shape, solid, tall, a head. It was right there, inches away from me. Ice filled my veins. My entire body recoiled as if something invisible had brushed against me. I jerked back so fast I nearly fell. My breath came in short, panicked gasps, my skin crawling as I clenched my phone in a death grip. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to see. I didn't want to understand what was breathing so close to me. Through the wall, my neighbor's whispers were unraveling into sheer panic. "It's trying to open my door," he gasped. "It knows I'm in here." Thud. The entire wall shook. I flinched. Thud. Again. Harder. It wasn't just knocking. It was ramming the door. Each impact was stronger than the last, the sound reverberating through the walls, through my bones, through my skull. I clenched my fists, my pulse hammering so fast I thought my chest might burst. My mind screamed at me to do something, anything. But what? What the hell were we dealing with? Was this a home invasion? A hallucination? Or was it something far, far worse? Then, BZZZT. My phone vibrated violently in my hands. Another alert. And I knew before I even looked, things were about to get so much worse. Do not interact with them. Do not speak to them. They are not who they were. A wave of nausea rolled through me, cold and relentless. Didn't want to accept what the message was saying. But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't some glitched emergency alert. Whatever was in my neighbor's apartment, it wasn't human anymore. His voice came again, barely above a whisper. Shaky, desperate. I think I can make a run for it, he breathed. His voice hitched. I can get to your place. No. I cut him off so fast my own voice startled me. My fingers dug into my phone, the pressure making my knuckles throb. Don't, I hissed. The alert says, crack. The sound ripped through the air like a gunshot. I jerked, my pulse slamming against my ribs. His door, it had splintered. The noise that followed was worse. A step, wet, sickening, like something heavy, something soaked in fluid, had stepped into his room. I heard my neighbor inhale sharply, then silence. A long, horrible, suffocating silence. I pressed my knuckles against my lips, biting back the urge to call his name. But I didn't move. I barely even breathed. Then, click, right against the wall. My stomach twisted into knots. And then I heard him, breathing. But it wasn't him anymore. My body wasn't mine anymore. I had turned into something hollow, something incapable of movement. Every part of me screamed to run, to hide, to do something. But all I could do was sit there, paralyzed. The wheezing breath on the other side of the wall filled the silence. Slow, rattling, thick with something wet. Each inhale dragged in too much air, too deep, too greedy, too wrong. Each exhale was worse, like it was forcing something unnatural out of its lungs. Then, BZZZT. My phone vibrated again. The sound, even muffled, felt deafening in the silence. My stomach twisted as I forced my gaze down to the screen. Do not make noise. Do not let them know you are awake. A sharp jolt of panic shot through me. I sucked in a breath, too fast, too sharp, too loud. My shaking fingers killed the phone screen, plunging my room into darkness once more. The air felt thick, pressing against my chest like a weight. Every muscle in my body ached from tension, coiled so tight I thought I might snap. I pressed my lips together, forcing my breath to slow, to quiet. Then, the breathing moved away from the wall. My stomach dropped. It wasn't leaving. It was moving toward my door. Soft, shuffling footsteps brushed against the floor, dragging ever so slightly, just enough to make my skin crawl. Slow, purposeful, wrong. I strained to track every pause, every shift in movement. Then they stopped, right outside my bedroom. A single gentle knock. My heart stopped. Then, a voice. My neighbor's voice. Hey, you awake? The exact same tone. The exact same words. If I hadn't known any better, I would have answered. But I did know better. It wasn't him. A shiver ripped down my spine. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing my hand over my mouth to stifle any sound, any movement. Don't make a noise. Don't let it know. A second knock. Louder this time. Hey, let me in. I could hear it now. The wrongness. The rhythm of the words slightly off. The pauses too long. The syllables stretching just a little too far. like it was learning. My fingers dug into my skin. I fought the overwhelming urge to scream. Then, the doorknob rattled. Slowly. Testing. Click, click, like it was checking to see if I had been careless. My eyes flickered to the chair braced under the handle. Would it hold? The rattling stopped. And then, a new sound. A long, dragging scrape. I bit down on my lip so hard I tasted blood. Something was being pulled down my hallway. Something heavy. The sound stretched out in agonizing, unnatural intervals. A slow, deliberate movement, the weight of something being dragged inch by inch. My mind raced. What was it? What was it carrying? I forced myself to stay still, to not move. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to do something, to run, to hide, to push furniture against the door. But I knew better. Any movement, any noise, and it would know I was awake. Then, BZZZT. My phone buzzed one final time. They can only stay until dawn. Do not let them in. Stay awake. I clamped a hand over my mouth, my shoulders shaking as silent tears burned at the edges of my eyes. So that was it. If I could just hold on, if I could just wait, they would leave. I just had to survive the night. For the next few hours, I listened. The thing outside my door never knocked again. It didn't call my name. It just waited. Every now and then, I heard it shift. The soft, sickening wheeze of its breath. The faint clicking sounds. Like something inside of it was moving wrong. Like it was adjusting itself. Waiting. Waiting for me to slip up. The night stretched on, endless, suffocating. I didn't dare check the time. I didn't dare move an inch. Then, just as the sky outside my window began to lighten, silence. I didn't move. I couldn't move. An hour passed. Then two. Finally, when the sun was bright in the sky, when I could hear birds chirping and distant cars rumbling down the street, I forced myself to move. My throat was raw from holding back my breath. I moved the chair away from the door. My hands shook violently as I unlatched the lock. I hesitated. Then I opened the door. The hallway was empty. No signs of life. No signs of anything. But on the floor, leading away from my door, long, wet footprints. I stared at them, my breath caught in my throat. They stretched all the way down the hall, disappearing around the corner. I couldn't tell if they were barefoot or something else. I wanted to believe it was over, but I knew better. The news had no answers. No one did. There were whispers online, forums, scattered social media posts. People were sharing the same experience, the same alert, the same warnings. Some people didn't make it. Some doors weren't strong enough, and some let them in. I never saw my neighbor again. I never heard him again. And now, when I try to sleep, I always wake up to the sound of breathing, even when I'm alone.